My husband and I, both 45 years old, have celebrated 11 years of marriage this year. When I met my husband for the first time, he was already divorced from his previous wife and had a 15-year-old stepson named Kyle. Kyle and I have always had a rocky relationship from the beginning. He never wanted his dad to marry me. His parents' divorce had left a significant impact on him, making it difficult for him to accept a new person entering his life. Although it was a challenge to build a connection with him, over time I made efforts to understand his perspective and create a safer space for him. Kyle, however, remained distant after expressing his resentment towards me openly. Our interactions have always been strained, but I kept trying, believing that with patience and understanding, we could eventually find common ground. My husband and I both started a business together in our early 20s, working tirelessly to make ends meet. Fortunately, our efforts paid off and we could sell the business, allowing us to retire early. With the proceeds, we fulfilled our dream, buying a beautiful seafront house. It has been a few years now, and we are enjoying a peaceful life in our cozy home. Kyle lived alternatively with us and his stepmom until he turned 18. Since then, he decided to move into his girlfriend's apartment, and they were living together. His girlfriend, Emily, comes from a wealthy family, and her parents had let her stay in one of their apartments with minimal rent. However, Kyle and Emily spent their days playing video games and lounging around with no effort to find employment. Every few months, Kyle reached out to my husband or his mom, seeking financial help to pay the rent or buy some groceries. We visited Kyle once and their apartment was really messy. Both of them didn't seem motivated to clean up the place. Whenever my husband talked with Kyle, I always overheard them arguing as my husband wanted Kyle to get a job and stop asking for money as an adult. The money issues caused a lot of tension between my husband and Kyle, making things awkward whenever the topic came up. This went on for a whole year, and despite the ongoing turmoil, I didn't say anything to my husband about his son and stayed out of their matter. Last December, my husband and I had just come back from a vacation when Kyle called. He told my husband that he and his girlfriend got kicked out of their apartment. It turned out that Emily's dad was tired of them not paying rent every month. He had encouraged Emily to get a job, but after a year of watching them play video games, he was frustrated and decided to kick both of them out of the apartment. While his girlfriend was getting to move into her sister's place for the time being, Kyle was left with nowhere to go. His mom wasn't open to him moving in, as she was now married, and her current husband wasn't keen on having an adult stepson living with them. My husband asked if I was okay with Kyle moving in with us, and I agreed, thinking this would be a temporary arrangement. Kyle moved in with us and has been living with us ever since. Initially, we were supportive, understanding that everyone goes through tough times. We even set up his own space and gave him his privacy. Occasionally, my husband would ask Kyle to apply for jobs, and he would nod and ignore him. As time passed, weeks turned into months, and it became apparent that Kyle had no intention of either finding a job or leaving our home anytime soon. He spent his days holed up in his room playing games. But that wasn't even the worst thing. He started to make my life difficult by not contributing to any household chores. I found myself doing all the cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping for the three of us. My husband has arthritis, so I don't let him do a lot of housework. When it's just the two of us, it didn't matter, but now it felt like I had an extra child to take care of instead of a responsible adult. Kyle's laziness and lack of initiative began to wear on me, making our home environment tense and uncomfortable. I voiced my displeasure several times, and my husband would always talk to Kyle, asking him to move out as soon as possible. Kyle would often react by getting angry, shouting and slamming the door in his face. As time went on, it started to become more and more challenging to find common ground or even have a civil conversation with Kyle regarding his future. The constant tension and conflicts were taking a toll on the once peaceful atmosphere we had enjoyed in our home. 2 months ago, my husband and I were away for a weekend to visit our close family friend. When we returned to our home, there was an unpleasant odor in the air. We walked into the kitchen where plates had been piled up in the sink that had attracted flies. Dirty laundry was strewn on the floor, and there were pizza boxes scattered all around. The place looked like a complete disaster, and I couldn't believe the mess Kyle had created in just a couple of days. When we entered his room to address the situation, we found Emily, his girlfriend, there as well. Confused and frustrated, we questioned them about what was happening. Kyle casually mentioned that Emily's sister had kicked her out, and she would be staying with us for now. I expressed my frustration at the state of the house. He shrugged it off, claiming they were busy with some video games and that I was better at cleaning the house anyway. His nonchalant attitude infuriated me, and I confronted him about when he and Emily planned to move out. In response, he slammed the door in my face. I stood there stunned by his disregard. It was becoming increasingly clear that he had no intention of taking responsibility for his actions or contributing to the household. My husband was feeling helpless and suggested calling the police. But I did not want to take such a drastic step, thinking this could be resolved more amicably. I told him that we would have a conversation with them later regarding this once we had all cooled down. That night, as I was cleaning up the kitchen, my husband had already gone to sleep. After finishing my chores, I headed upstairs, and while walking past Kyle's room, overheard Emily and him talking about us loudly. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but Kyle was bragging and laughing about how he was having the best time of his life at our home without having to lift a single finger. He went on to tell her how I had been taking care of him for months without complaining, like a dedicated maid. Emily replied that he should thank her for coming up with such a great idea, so they could both now live here peacefully. She continued to tell him that they should stretch this vacation for as long as possible. It was like a punch to the gut, realizing Emily was the mastermind behind this while my stepson Kyle was taking advantage of me. The frustration and betrayal hit me hard as I continued listening, feeling a sense of deep resentment building within me. They spoke about how gullible my husband and I were while planning to stay in our home indefinitely. I was stunned as I listened to them. All this time I had stayed silent, respecting Kyle's space as my stepson, but the realization that he saw me as nothing more than a maid who took care of him shattered my heart. I couldn't sleep the entire night, tossing and turning in bed. Feeling deceived and taken advantage of, I realized it was time to teach them both a lesson they would never forget. The next day, I decided to put my plan in motion by taking a stand against them without making a fuss. I stopped doing chores. No more cleaning up after them or making their meals. I deliberately left their dirty dishes untouched, allowing them to accumulate in the sink. I also started to forget about their laundry, leaving their clothes unwashed and scattered all around the house. At first, they didn't notice anything odd, but their initial nonchalance soon turned into frustration, and they struggled to find clean clothes to wear. It didn't take long for them to notice the change, and when they asked if I was going to do their laundry, I calmly explained that I wasn't in the mood to work, so they would have to find a way to clean their own clothes. My husband noticed my behavior and understood exactly what I was doing. He had my back and didn't even listen when Kyle complained that he had no clean plates to eat food out of. My husband and I started having our meals outside, so we didn't spend as much time in the house. My next phase of the plan was to start messing with their beloved gaming stuff. Kyle and Emily love their video games and seem pretty attached to their gadgets too, so I thought, why not shake things up there? First off, I misplaced some of their crucial gaming accessories, controllers, cables, you name it. Imagine wanting to dive into your favorite game and bam, your gear is nowhere to be found. Annoying, right? Kyle turned his room upside down trying to find his missing accessories without any success. Then I decided to add a bit of technical trouble to make their stay more inconvenient. Slow internet? Check. Frequent power outages? Double check. But the real kicker, I messed with their saved game progress whenever I could. I deleted their game files or changed their settings. They would spend hours getting to a certain level only to find out that their progress was gone. Kyle and Emily were starting to catch on that something wasn't quite right, and I could feel their frustration building up. The tension in our house was thick, like you could cut it with a butter knife. I kept acting like I knew nothing about these things happening and remained cool as a cat. One evening, they discovered there was no more food left in the house because my husband and I had stopped buying groceries. Kyle stormed into the living room, his face twisted in confusion, yelling at us that we were starving them by not giving them any food. Emily followed behind him, visibly annoyed. My husband then firmly told Kyle that he was right and that it was time for them to pack their bags and leave. We could not keep playing caretaker for him and Emily. Kyle started protesting, claiming they had nowhere to go. My husband, not one to mince words, said he didn't care if they ended up on the streets because he was done with their bullshit. The confrontation escalated with raised voices and pointed fingers. Then Kyle turned his ire towards me, blaming me for the chaos. He called me useless and suggested that I get to work around the house by cleaning up after them. He remarked how dirty the house was and that I should do a better job. I responded with a slight smile, reminding him he was a man-child refusing to leave our nest. So if he wanted a cleaner home, he should clean up after himself. Kyle's face turned red. Emily, in defense, started to claim that their stay at our home was only temporary, and as Kyle's stepmother, I should take care of them until then. That's when I dropped the bomb. Their secret plan. I spilled that I overheard them talking about their plans of living in our house and treating it as a vacation. They looked at me stunned as I went on to say that I knew this was Emily's plan all along, and Kyle had gone along with it. I wanted to teach them both a lesson, and hopefully they learn to never mess with us again. I guess this is when they must have realized why the house had been a mess for the past few weeks and how their gaming equipment kept disappearing. Kyle turned to me, asking if I was behind it, and I nodded. He got mad and started yelling that his gaming gear was expensive and he couldn't afford to replace it. Emily, also angry, questioned if I deliberately messed with them by cutting off the internet and neglecting to do their laundry. I told Emily she was an unwanted guest in our home, and while I had agreed to Kyle moving in, I did not feel obligated to take care of her or wash her laundry. I told them both that if they moved out immediately, I would give them back their gaming equipment, which I had hidden earlier. To make my point clear, I warned them that if they didn't leave, the next step in my plan was to take away Kyle's bedroom door. Kyle and Emily looked at me shocked, but seeing my determined face, they knew that I wasn't being sarcastic about it. I gazed at them, feeling a sense of satisfaction, knowing they were cornered. The next day, they began packing up their stuff. Kyle kept grumbling about the gaming gear, but I stayed firm, saying they would get it once they left. They kept insisting that they had nowhere to go, but we stood our ground, pointing out this was their fault for not being independent enough until now. As they left, I handed over their gaming gear. Kyle shot me a look of resentment, but I no longer cared. I had done my part of trying to maintain a cordial relationship with him, and in the process, he had used my kindness to his advantage. The house felt lighter without their drama, and my husband and I finally had some peace. Since Kyle and Emily moved out, my husband received a call from his ex-wife. Apparently, Kyle complained to her, and she started to scold us for making Kyle's life difficult. She believes we should have let him stay with us longer until he could afford to live on his own. She even called me an a-hole for how I handled things with her son. The criticism stung, and I am now wondering if I was an a-hole for kicking my stepson and his girlfriend out and teaching them a lesson that they would never forget. Update 1. I listened to everyone's advice and invited my husband's ex-wife, Haley, to have dinner with us so we could talk and clear up any misunderstandings she might have regarding our situation with Kyle. During dinner with Hillary, tensions hung in the air as we started to address the misunderstandings surrounding Kyle's eviction. My husband and I took turns detailing the challenges we faced when Kyle lived with us. We recounted how he refused to contribute to the household, leaving us to shoulder the burden of expenses. He refused to clean up after himself and expected me to take care of him like a child. The relentless financial requests, arguments, and general disregard for our shared space became a pattern that we could no longer tolerate. I described the escalating tension, emphasizing Kyle's unwillingness to engage in any positive conversation with us. My voice held a mix of frustration and sadness as I explained how our attempts to discuss his future and encourage self-sufficiency were met with anger and defiance. Surprisingly, as I unveiled the reality of our struggles, it appeared that Haley's perspective started to shift. The conversation prompted her to realize that Kyle's version of events was distorted. To our relief, she proved to be more understanding than we had anticipated. Haley admitted that she was unaware of the extent of Kyle's behavior, expressing gratitude for shedding light on the matter. It turned out that Kyle had been manipulating the narrative, portraying himself as a victim of our supposed mistreatment. I proceeded to share the incident of overhearing Kyle and Emily plotting to live with us, recounting the shocking conversation where Kyle boasted about me taking care of him as a dedicated maid. Haley listened to us in shock as I also revealed Emily's role as the mastermind behind the chaos. In fact, she had been actively participating in the plan to overstay their welcome and exploit our hospitality. The dinner marked a turning point, allowing us to clear the air and find common ground. It became evident that our actions were not only justified but necessary to maintain a healthy and harmonious home environment. After listening to our version of the events, Haley asked my husband what they should do next regarding Kyle. My husband told her that he loved his son very much and wouldn't mind helping him out with a new place to stay, but Kyle had to demonstrate a commitment to change by actively seeking employment. Haley informed us that she was concerned about them as they were currently staying at a friend's place with nowhere to go. After extensive discussion, a decision was reached. Haley agreed to have a conversation with Kyle, proposing to take him in for a period of 3 months under the condition that he actively searches for employment during this time. It was also decided that once Kyle secured a job, my husband would help out with a new place to move into. We ended the conversation with a sense of relief and understanding, hopeful that this arrangement could be a positive turning point for Kyle's future if he was willing to take matters seriously and change his life. Update 2. Kyle and Emily broke up. Haley called my husband today, 3 weeks after she had dinner with us. Ever since our heart-to-heart about Kyle and his future, Haley had been trying to reach him with no luck. Today, though, Kyle finally reached out to Haley, all upset. Turns out he discovered that Emily had hooked up with a mutual friend and they ended up in a massive brawl. In the aftermath, Emily decided to call it quits, declaring that she didn't want to be in a relationship with Kyle anymore. Hearing this news hit us hard because we knew Kyle was head over heels for her. Despite their shared penchant for laziness, we genuinely believed they were a match made in heaven. However, it seems Emily had swiftly moved on to another guy and plans to move into his place, leaving Kyle high and dry. Haley extended an offer for Kyle to move in, reiterating the conditions discussed during our dinner. It seems like Kyle has finally grasped the reality that he needs to straighten out his life and has agreed to Haley's terms. While we can't predict how long this determination will last, one thing is clear: our doors are closed for him indefinitely. From what I know about Haley, she's a no-nonsense mother, so if Kyle doesn't secure a job in 3 months, she will definitely be kicking him out. I hope Emily breaking up with him is the jumpstart he needs to realize that he needs to get his act together in life and become financially independent. As for me and my husband, we have been living in peace, undisturbed by anyone in our home. I don't wake up in the mornings anymore with a load of dirty laundry to clean or a sink full of half-eaten food and dirty plates to wash. My husband can now stock the fridge with his favorite snacks and not worry about them disappearing. We are also planning a trip to go and decompress from the stress of last month. Overall, our life is back to normal. I will provide another update about Kyle if there are any new developments. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update. I have been hounded with requests from people to give an update. This is going to be a happy update. Life at our seafront home has returned to the peaceful haven we envisioned when we first moved in. The house is serene with no trace of the drama that once engulfed it. My husband and I have enjoyed uninterrupted tranquility, relishing the simple pleasures of a clutter-free home. Kyle, after the breakup with Emily, moved in with his mother, Haley, following the conditions we discussed during our dinner. Their breakup acted as a catalyst for positive change. The initial 3 months were challenging for him as he actively sought employment. It wasn't an instant success. There were a few false starts and moments of frustration. However, as weeks passed, Kyle continued to demonstrate a growing determination to turn his life around. He attended job interviews, revamped his resume, and reached out to potential employers. It took some time, but eventually he landed a job that matched his skills and interests. Haley, true to her nature, held him accountable, ensuring he stood on his own feet. It sure may not have been an easy transition for Kyle, but it seemed to be a necessary and transformative one. My husband, relieved and proud of Kyle's progress, decided it was time to discuss the next steps. They had a heart-to-heart conversation about Kyle's newfound employment and the importance of taking the next step towards independence. My husband emphasized that while he was proud of Kyle's achievements, it was crucial for him to transition from Haley's place to his own. Understanding the significance of this move, Kyle took the initiative to find a suitable apartment. We visited the place together, and it was heartwarming to witness how much Kyle had changed. In a gesture of sincerity, Kyle even cooked dinner for us as a way to formally say sorry for the challenges he had put us through. My husband, visibly proud, encouraged Kyle to extend his apology to me, acknowledging the support I had provided. Kyle, a bit shyly, admitted that he had been wrong in the way he treated us. I gracefully accepted his apologies. It was a touching moment, seeing him embrace adulthood and take pride in creating a home. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of accomplishment and optimism for Kyle's future. When we inquired about Emily, Kyle shared that moving on from their relationship was tough, but he had come to terms with the realization that she influenced him to make decisions he wasn't proud of. He went into detail about the period after we asked him to leave our home, highlighting the shift in Emily's behavior towards him. Initially, he thought it was due to the eviction, but when she began flirting with his friends, it seemed more like she was seeking someone new to connect with. We felt bad for Kyle and hoped that in the future he would be more careful about his partners. We also warned him that Emily might try to reach out to him now that he has a job and a house. But Kyle assured us that having experienced betrayal, he wouldn't be giving her a second chance. Since that dinner, things have continued to get better and better. Kyle and I have a much stronger relationship now. The lingering tensions from the past have gradually dissipated, replaced by a newfound understanding and respect between us. We are so proud to see Kyle working hard and thriving in his life. My husband and I invite him and Haley over for dinner whenever we can. We have had multiple open conversations about our experiences, addressing past grievances and clarifying misconceptions. Kyle, demonstrating genuine remorse for his previous behavior, has consistently shown effort in building trust. It's heartwarming to witness the growth in our connection, turning what was once strained into a bond founded on mutual respect and goodwill. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl